What if you missed the one performance that made a living room go silent? Would you even know it? Before capes and CGI, a man's shoulders did the talking. We measured heroes by how they stood in the light and how a crowd went quiet when the gate rose. Many of you watched those Saturday epics the same way I did, on a small set with big sound, and you know the difference between muscle and presence. The best gladiators had both. They didn't pose, they carried purpose. Some fought for freedom, some for pride, some just to make it to the next horn blast. Tonight, we're ranking heat the old-fashioned way, looks that held the lens, bodies that read like armor, and a stare that said, "Not today." Miss this list, and you'll argue the wrong names all week. You've got your favorite already. Let's see if we agree. If a smirk can start a revolt, then number 12 proves American cool can topple stone. Number 12, Rory Calhoun, American cool in a stone coliseum. You remember Rory's kind, the hat brim traded for a laurel, the walk that says he's already measured the room. In the Colossus of Rhodes, he isn't carved like a bodybuilder, he's cut like a gambler who knows when to press the bet. Lean shoulders, easy smile, eyes that stay amused even when the knives come out. That contrast, swagger against marble, made him pop. We'd seen emperors glower and soldiers stomp. Rory arrived like a tourist who didn't plan on saving a city and somehow did. What made him hot wasn't just the face. It was the temperature he set in every frame. He lets the camera come to him, stands a half beat longer than most men would, turns a doorway into a stage. And when the trouble hits, ropes, torches, traps, he moves with that American looseness that Europe kept trying to copy. No fuss, no panic, just the sense that he'll improvise his way out and make you grin while he does it. For those of us who watched on weekend TV, he scratched a different itch than the iron statues. He sold danger with charm, not grunts. The sword looks lighter in his hand because he's lighter on his feet. And somehow that made the whole picture feel faster, cooler, younger. If a smirk can start a revolt, the next slot trades charm for precision, steel that doesn't announce itself until it's already through. Number 11, Richard Harrison, the quiet blade who didn't miss. Some men win the arena by shouting. Richard Harrison won by wasting nothing. In Gladiators 7, he looks like a statue until the bell. Then every motion has a purpose. Shoulders set, feet sure, strikes that land where eyes were looking a heartbeat ago. You and I grew up spotting the difference between posing and presence. Harrison never posed. He stood like a man who already knew the angles and only spent energy where it counted. That economy reads as heat because confidence always does. What makes him hottest isn't bulk, it's control. The camera catches clean lines, forearms that coil, a chest that lifts just before contact, a jaw that doesn't telegraph pride or fear. He doesn't play to the crowd, and that makes the crowd lean in. The fights feel honest. You see the setup, the trap, the sudden finish. No flab, no flail. Just a fighter who trusts discipline more than noise. For those of us who wore out our weekend reruns, he was the antidote to bluster. The kind of gladiator who could cross a courtyard and end trouble before the horns even finished. If precision is what keeps you watching, then you'll like what happens next. Because if control makes a man dangerous, then craft turns him nearly untouchable. Number 10, Brad Harris. Craft built into muscle. Some bodies look carved. Brad Harris looked engineered. You could see it in the way he planted before a hit, the way a punch traveled from the floor up. Not just arms, but hips, back, balance. Years of stunt work taught him to spend strength like money, and it showed in those peplum brawls. Fury of Hercules, the city sieges, the alley ambushes. Harris never wasted a motion. He didn't peacock, he solved problems. That's the kind of heat our generation recognizes. Competence that looks good because it's real. On screen, he wore the armor like it belonged to him yesterday and would tomorrow. No clank, no fuss, just that squared stance that says the first man in is also the last man out. The camera loved his shoulders because they moved with purpose. And the fights read clean because he understood distance. He'd sell the blow, take the fall, and be back on his feet with the kind of calm that makes the crowd breathe again. You don't need a speech when your footwork speaks. And there was a softness under it, eyes that checked the room before the swing, the sense that the strength came with rules. He fought for people, not applause. That blend, iron frame, decent heart, plays especially well for those of us who've seen real life test both. If skill makes a gladiator reliable, then grace makes him unforgettable. And the next man brings bronze and ballet in the same frame, shoulders like a statue, movement like a dancer. Number 9, Mark Forrest, bronze power, with a dancer's timing. Broad across the chest and tight at the waist, Mark Forrest looked like he'd stepped out of a temple frieze and learned to breathe. In Goliath and the Dragon and those Maquiste adventures, he didn't just lift gates and toss men. He placed every move like it mattered. That's what many of us noticed on our living room sets, the difference between heaving and handling. Forrest handled. The blade came up on the half beat. The stance settled. The finish landed clean. Power was the point, but grace sold it. What gave him heat wasn't only mass, it was posture. He stood tall without puffing, chin easy, eyes steady, the kind of confidence you can feel through a small screen. When the crowd roared, he didn't milk it. He absorbed it, then answered with a calm surge that made the arena look like his gym. Even in quieter scenes, the shoulders told the story. A man built to carry weight without complaint. Many body men crashed through props. Forrest made them look expensive. You watched because the strength felt earned, and because he moved like the music was in his head. If elegance can make brute force beautiful, then what happens when perfection of proportion walks in? If Forrest danced in bronze, the next man defined the mold. Number 8, Steve Reeves, the statue that learned to breathe. You didn't need the marquee to know Steve Reeves had arrived. The frame said it first. Shoulders squared like architecture, waist tight as a column, arms that looked cast rather than grown. In Hercules and its wave of cousins, Reeves didn't chase attention. He attracted it by standing still. That stillness was the magic. He'd lift a yoke, shift a boulder, or step onto a balcony, and the room changed temperature. Strength wasn't a tantrum with him, it was quiet certainty. What kept us watching on those Sunday matinees was the calm in his face. The eyes weren't angry, they were settled. He made impossible tasks look routine, which is its own kind of heat. And when he did move, draw the bow, take the stride, set his feet for a throw, the mechanics were clean, almost instructional. No wasted flair, no goofy grimace, just competence presented like ritual. You believed this man could carry a city gate, because nothing in his body language argued with the idea. Reeves also had a gentleman's vibe that read well for our generation. No sneer, no showboating. He looked like the strongest neighbor you ever had, the one who would fix the fence and never mention it. That modesty wrapped around monumental muscle is why people still say Hercules and see his silhouette first. But perfection has a cousin, pressure. If Reeves was the ideal, what happens when the ideal gets teeth? When the statue decides to pounce? That's where the next man lives. Heavier hands, darker stare, jungle-born power hammered into Roman steel. Number 7, Gordon Scott. Jungle power, Roman steel. Before the helmets and greaves, Gordon Scott was the jungle's strongest sentence. No wasted words, just motion that meant something. When he traded vines for vexillum in Gladiator of Rome and Hero of Rome, the wildness didn't disappear. It focused. You could see it in the shoulders. Thicker than Reeves, more working man than statue, and in that watchful stillness, he carried between strikes. He stood like a spring under a tarp. The camera would hang on his face a beat too long, and you'd feel it, something heavy getting ready. Scott's heat comes from how he moves. No decorative wind-ups, no arm-only swings. He drives from the hips, plants the foot, and sends the whole frame through the blow. That's why the fights read clean, even on an old TV set. The geometry is honest, and when the story calls for pain, he doesn't whine it. He absorbs it with that tight jaw, and pushes forward like a man who's settled more than a few problems off camera. For those of us who grew up with Tarzan matinees, that carryover of animal economy into Roman discipline was pure catnip. There's decency under his bulk, too. He plays loyal until betrayed, soft-spoken with civilians, immediate with bullies. The effect is simple and attractive. A big man who chooses control first and violence only when someone insists. You believe him as a soldier, you cheer him as an underdog, and when he finally erupts, you sit back and let the thunder do its work. If power held in reserve is what makes Scott compelling, then what happens when power is the threat? When the face itself looks like trouble and the room chills before the sword leaves the scabbard? If restraint was virtue here, the next man makes menace an art form. Number 6. Jack Palance, handsome menace in the arena. Some faces ask for sympathy. Jack Palance asked for distance. In those Roman epics, most memorably as the top killer in Barabbas, he didn't enter scenes, he altered the air. Cheekbones like blades, eyes that never blinked first, a grin that said mercy was a rumor. You and I learned early that some men look strong and some men feel dangerous. Palance felt dangerous. He moved like he'd already chosen the ending and was only deciding how rough the middle needed to be. What made him hottest wasn't polish, it was voltage. The way his shoulders stayed loose while the hands stayed ready. The way he circled opponents like a man testing fence posts, then struck in a single mean line. No wasted effort, no roaring for applause. Even the still moments burned. Chin tipped, breath quiet, that sideways glance that told you the other fellow's night was getting shorter, and beneath the iron a flicker of sorrow. His brutes were never empty. They were injured animals who learned to bite first. For us weekend watchers, that mix, beauty cut with danger, was irresistible. You didn't cheer him, you tracked him. When he fell, you felt relief and a little loss, because the sun doesn't feel as hot when the storm leaves town. If Palance made menace look elegant, the next man makes conscience look powerful. Broad shoulders, yes, but a gaze that argues with fate. If cruelty ruled this round, the arena is about to meet conviction. Number 5, Victor Mature, fire in the eyes, faith in the spine. Some men swing harder. Victor Mature looked like he felt deeper. In Demetrius and the Gladiators, he wore the armor like a burden, and the sword like a last resort. Shoulders broad, stance steady. Eyes telling you there's a war inside long before the trumpet calls the one outside. We grew up spotting that difference on our living room sets. The loud bruiser versus the man who carries weight without boasting. Mature was the second kind. When the crowd roared, he didn't strut. He listened, as if measuring what the moment would cost. His heat comes from conflict you can read across a room. The camera loves the way his jaw tightens when duty and mercy collide, the way he takes a blow and answers with control instead of rage. You believe him as a slave pushed too far, a fighter who would rather protect than perform, a man who doesn't need a speech to make a stand. Even when temptation circles, wine, applause, easy power, he plays the pause, and that hesitation becomes the hottest thing in the scene. Conscience, with a chest like a door. What kept us watching then, and still now, is that he gave strength a purpose. No empty victories, no flex for its own sake. He made the arena feel like a test of character, not just a pit of noise. You saw a good man trying not to harden, and when he finally lifted the blade, you felt the decision land in your own ribs. If Mature makes the soul visible in the sand, the next man moves the battle off the sand entirely. The body stays calm, the voice does the cutting, and the arena becomes a chamber of the mind. Number 4, Richard Burton, the voice that cut like steel. Not every fight needs dust and blood. Richard Burton proved that in the robe, where the arena is conscience, and the weapon is a sentence spoken low. We remember that voice, rich, steady, a little wounded, and how it could fill a room without a single clang of armor. Broad shoulders under crimson, eyes that carried the weight of command, he stood like a man used to winning and suddenly unsure what victory even means. For those of us who met this on weekend television, it felt bigger than the set. The struggle reached out of Rome and into the living room. Burton's heat was gravity. He didn't lunge, he drew you in. The chin tilted, the breath held, the word chosen with care, and you felt the cut. When Marcellus is pulled between rank and revelation, Burton lets the war happen across his face. Pride stiffening the spine, doubt softening the gaze, then that final resolve that makes silence louder than trumpets. No bellowing, no theatrics, just a presence that told you truth can buck an empire. That's why he earns a gladiator's place without the sand. In a story of politics and faith, he plays the moment before the blade, the inner decision that decides everything after. It's a different kind of heat, the kind our generation recognizes from real life. The night you decide who you are and live with it. If Burton won with voice and nerve, the next man wins with will and wheels. No helmeted duel, no arena sand, just reins gripped like fate itself, and a jaw set against injustice. When thunder comes on chariot rims, and the crowd forgets to breathe, you know exactly who's turning the course. Number 3, Charlton Heston, the charioteer who outran fate. Some heroes win by lifting heavier. Charlton Heston won by refusing to bend. In Ben-Hur, he isn't a pit fighter. He's a man whose will hardens until steel has to keep up. You remember the set of that jaw, the shoulders held like a standard, the eyes fixed on a finish. He refuses to surrender. The chariot race isn't just spectacle, it's character, revealed at full speed. Reins bite, wheels scream, and Heston leans into danger like a man who's tired of being cheated by it. That composure reads hotter than any shouted challenge. What gripped us on those Sunday broadcasts was his steadiness. No flail, no panic, just a long breath and a choice made. He carries loss without self-pity, turns fury into aim, and makes vindication feel earned rather than handed. Even out of the arena, he walks like a soldier between storms, courteous to the weak, immovable with bullies, always measuring the room before it measures him. It's the look of a man older audiences recognize, hurt, still upright, still driving. If Heston makes victory a test of endurance, our next pick makes defiance the point. No wheels, no quarter, just a gladiator who sees a rotten command and answers with a choice that changes everything. Number 2, Woody Strode, dignity, stronger than chains. Some fighters win the crowd. Woody Strode wins your respect first. In Spartacus, he enters as Draba, muscles etched like basalt, eyes measuring the cage. The duel begins like any other, steel meeting sweat, the crowd hungry for blood, and then the moment that still stops hearts. He beats the favorite, holds the kill, and refuses. No speech, no swagger, just a man who looks at a corrupt command and says no with his whole body. When he turns and drives at the gilded box instead, you feel the arena flip. The sand belongs to him for one clean, eternal breath. That's heat our generation understands. Not noise, but nerve. Strode carries power like a promise. Long lines coiled back. A sprinter's grace married to a wrestler's base. Even his stillness speaks. He doesn't perform cruelty to prove strength. He proves strength by choosing mercy until mercy is denied. The result is a moral uppercut. You don't just watch Draba, you square your shoulders with him. And when the price is paid, the film changes temperature. After Draba, every clash feels heavier, every choice louder. He isn't the star of the poster. He's the reason the poster matters. If one man's refusal can light a revolt, then only one name can carry the blaze to its end. If defiance is the spark. Number 1, Kirk Douglas, the rebel who turned sand into a standard. Some stars play gladiators. Kirk Douglas made the word bigger. In Spartacus, he isn't posing for legend. He's grinding it out, jaw set like a weapon, eyes that don't blink when the lash lands, a body that looks built by years, not a gym. We grew up with that face on small screens and still felt the room widen when he appeared. The heat wasn't just muscle, it was will. He makes suffering look like a debt he intends to collect. And when he raises his chin, you know the bill is due. Douglas understood the camera's hunger for honesty. He fights low, shoulders forward, breath loud in the chest, as if every strike costs him, and he's paying gladly. Even at rest, he looks dangerous, hands loose, stance ready, the kind of tension you recognize from men who've had to stand their ground outside of stories. And then there's the fire you can't fake, the moment he claims the men beside him, not as followers but as equals. The line we all remember works, because his face earns it long before his mouth says it. Off the sand, he brings the same charge, tender with the people he loves, iron with the ones who would break them, never letting the chain be the last word. It's that combination our generation responds to. Strength without vanity, conviction without sermon, a fighter who chooses dignity first and refuses to let the world talk him out of it. By the time the trumpets die, you're not just cheering a victory, you're standing up straighter in your own chair. If the arena for us was a living room and the crowd was family on the sofa, Douglas still wins the night. He's why Gladiator means more than blades and cheers. It means a man who decides what he stands for and then stands there. We didn't chase trivia tonight. We chased the feeling you remember, the hush before a gate lifts, the breath you hold when a man decides who he is. From Rory's cool grin to Douglas's iron stare, these 12 reminded us that strength is more than size. It's poise under heat, grace under pressure, and a promise kept when no one's watching. If you watched these on a small set like I did, you know the sound the house used to make when the trumpet hit and dinner went cold. That's the spell we honored. Now it's your turn. Lock your number 1 in the comments. Tell us who we missed, and name the scene that still tightens your chest. If you want more dives into the men who made our weekends louder than stadiums, hit subscribe. The arena will open again. Count on it.